always think back to that kitchen, the heart of our home, where everything started and where everything always came back to. It's a simple, familiar place, but in it, we built our life, and the warmth and love it contained shaped me in ways I'm only now beginning to understand. My childhood home was a haven of stability. The world outside may have been chaotic, but inside our four walls, it was different. There was always the sound of my mother's voice humming softly, like a lullaby, as she worked. She was never in a rush. Her hands, so steady and sure, seemed to move with purpose, whether she was cooking, cleaning, or folding laundry. Those hands were never cold. They always held something. A dish towel, a book, my hand, or Maggie's, my younger sister, who was always following me around, trying to be just like me, her big brother. It was always in the kitchen where I'd find myself drawn. Mama's cooking was magic. The smells that swirled through the house every day, cinnamon, fresh bread, something sweet, and something savory, all mixed together, creating an aroma I can still smell in my memories. The kitchen was our sanctuary, the place where we'd sit around the table at the end of every day, laughing, talking, arguing over silly things, but always wrapped in love. There were no perfect moments, only perfect warmth. I remember baking cookies with Mama and Maggie. It was always a special occasion when we made them. We'd pour flour onto the counter, mix in the sugar, the butter, and eggs, each of us taking a turn stirring the dough. We were always so serious about it, but there was a lightness to the task. It was a kind of simple joy, a tiny piece of time that felt as if it stretched on forever. Mama would help me tie the apron around my waist, her hands gentle but firm. "Not too much flour," she'd say with a smile. And then, as we shaped the dough into little circles, I remember how she would explain the tradition, the way each recipe was passed down, how it connected us to the past, our family's history, and the love we had for each other. There was something powerful in those little acts, something beyond the flour and sugar and heat of the oven. They were acts of love. We didn't need grand gestures. The small moments we shared in that kitchen, the time spent together, the care in each gesture, were all that mattered. I felt grounded in that love, in those traditions, as if they were an anchor for my heart, tethering me to the essence of who I was and where I came from. Every moment felt like it had meaning. There was peace in the simple things, a quiet joy in the familiar rhythms of our lives. Mama's voice was always gentle, soft like a lullaby. As she'd tell us stories about her childhood, her own mother, the way life used to be, she'd speak with such fondness about her family, about their struggles and triumphs, and I could feel how her love for them had woven itself into her being, how it had shaped the way she loved us. And Maggie, my sweet, impetuous sister, she would always want to know more, to understand everything. She'd pepper Mama with questions, her curious nature always trying to unravel the mysteries of the world around her. I was the older one, the protector, always looking out for her, but I think she taught me just as much as I taught her. In some ways, I was the one who looked up to her. Maggie had this unshakable belief in everything being right in the world, that no matter what happened, things would always be okay. It was a belief I envied. I remember so clearly one evening after we had finished baking, the three of us sat together at the kitchen table, a plate of cookies between us. Maggie was talking animatedly about her plans for the future, her eyes bright with excitement. Mama laughed softly, looking at both of us with so much love in her eyes that I thought my heart might burst. We were so content, so happy, without any care beyond that moment. It was a peace I never wanted to end. But even in the warmth of those moments, something began to shift. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it was as if a shadow was cast over everything, though I couldn't quite see it. The happiness I felt in that kitchen, surrounded by my family, was about to be ripped away. It started with a tightness in my chest. At first, I thought it was nothing, maybe just a little too much excitement or perhaps stress. It didn't seem like anything to worry about, but as the evening progressed, the pain grew sharper, a stabbing sensation that I couldn't shake. I tried to ignore it, but it was impossible. I found myself growing more and more uncomfortable, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Maggie noticed first. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking at me with wide, concerned eyes. I tried to smile, to reassure her, but my smile faltered. The pain was growing, becoming unbearable, and the room felt like it was closing in on me. My vision blurred. I could hear Mama's voice calling to me, but it sounded far away, as though I were underwater. I stumbled, then collapsed against the counter, the floor rushing up to meet me. "Mama," I heard Maggie scream, her voice a mixture of panic and confusion. "Mama, something's wrong with him." I wanted to tell her that I was fine, that I just needed to rest, but the words wouldn't come. My body was betraying me, and I couldn't stop it. The pain was intense now, suffocating, and the world around me seemed to fade, like a painting being washed away in a storm. The sharp sting in my chest turned into an overwhelming pressure, and then, all at once, it was gone. I thought for a moment that I had passed out, but it was something far stranger than that. As the pain disappeared, I felt my body growing cold. My mind was still alert, still aware, but I wasn't sure where I was anymore. I wasn't sure what was happening. It was as though I was floating above my own body, looking down at myself, lying still on the kitchen floor. Mama was there, kneeling beside me, her face pale with fear. Maggie was sobbing, holding my hand, shaking me. But I didn't feel them. I didn't feel the cool tile beneath me or the warmth of their hands. There was no longer any connection to the world I knew, to the kitchen, to my family. It was like I had slipped out of my body and into some other place, somewhere I couldn't define. In that moment, there was no panic. There was no fear. There was only peace, profound, deep peace. It was as though everything I had known in my life, all the love and warmth of the kitchen, of my family, was still with me, even though I was no longer tethered to the body I'd called my own. I could still hear Mama's voice, still feel the echo of Maggie's touch. But they felt distant, as if I was a dream, and they were part of it. I felt untethered, not lost, but free. And then I saw it. A light. A blinding light that wasn't harsh, but warm, like a comforting embrace. It seemed to call to me, pulling me toward it, toward something I couldn't understand yet, but that I knew I needed to follow. And so, without fear, I did. The moment I began to move toward the light, I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was with me, guiding me. There were no words, no explanation, only a presence. It was like a pull on my soul, something familiar, something beyond this world. And in that moment, I knew. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. As my heart stopped, a strange quiet descended on me. There was no blinding pain, no overwhelming darkness, no wild, frantic thoughts clawing their way through my mind. Instead, there was a profound calmness, an uncanny stillness that wrapped itself around me like a blanket, soft and unyielding. It wasn't something I had expected, nor was it something I had feared. It was a peace I had never known existed, but which now seemed to stretch infinitely before me. I remember the exact moment when the world I had always known began to slip away from me, as though I were a leaf floating gently from a branch, drifting slowly but surely from the tree of life. First, the sharp pain in my chest faded into nothingness. It was as if it had never been there. The tightness and the pressure that had consumed me moments ago simply evaporated, leaving nothing but an overwhelming quiet. I tried to move, to feel something, but my body refused to respond. I could no longer feel the cool, hard tile beneath me, or the warmth of Maggie's small hand clutching mine. The room, with its familiar smells of cinnamon and freshly baked cookies, seemed to fade into the background, like an old photograph losing its color. I couldn't reach out to touch it, to hold on to the comforting scent of my mother's cooking, nor could I hear the soft sounds of her voice calling my name. The comforting, everyday things I had always relied on were slowly slipping away, disintegrating into a nothingness that, oddly enough, felt far more peaceful than any fear I might have expected. The detachment wasn't violent or sudden. It was gradual, gentle, like stepping out of one room and into another. I was no longer tethered to my body, no longer confined by the physical world. My senses, though still active, no longer had a connection to the earthly realm. I could still sense things, but there was no longer a physical form to feel them with. I was outside of myself, watching the scene unfold from some far-off place, as if I were watching a film rather than experiencing it firsthand. I saw Maggie kneeling beside me, tears streaming down her face. I saw Mama, her hands shaking as she pressed them to her chest, trying desperately to revive me, to call me back. I could hear her voice, but it wasn't directed toward me. It was as if I could hear it echoing from far away. I could hear her whispering my name over and over again, as if that repetition might somehow break through the veil that had descended between us. But I couldn't respond. I wasn't able to move, to reassure her that everything would be okay. I wanted to reach out, to tell her that there was no need to worry, that there was nothing to fear. But my body was a distant memory now. I could no longer feel the warmth of Maggie's hand in mine, or the strength of Mama's touch. The simple pleasures of that kitchen, the light of the afternoon sun spilling through the window, the soft hum of life happening around me, these things had all become distant, blurred, like a half-forgotten dream. And yet, there was no fear. I wasn't scared, not in the way I had imagined I would be. Instead, there was an overwhelming peace, a peace that washed over me like a gentle tide. The kind of peace you feel when you lie down after a long day, when you know you're safe, when you know you're loved. It was the kind of peace I had always longed for, but never fully understood until now. I felt as though I was being cradled by something greater than myself, something vast and all-encompassing. It wasn't just the absence of pain, it was the presence of something incredibly beautiful, something beyond words, beyond comprehension. I watched my body lying motionless on the floor, a sense of detachment sweeping over me. It seemed so strange, almost surreal, as if that body wasn't truly mine anymore. It was just a shell, an empty vessel that no longer held the essence of who I was. I could still see the outlines of my family, still hear the muffled sounds of their voices, but it was as if I were observing them from some higher vantage point, floating above it all. I could feel them, sense their distress, but I no longer belonged to that world. I was no longer part of it in the way I had once been. The scent of the cookies, sweet, warm, familiar, was still in the air, and in that moment, it felt like a final reminder of everything I had once known. The simple joy of baking in the kitchen with Mama and Maggie, the laughter that filled the air as we shared stories and made memories. I could still taste the sweetness of those moments, still feel the warmth of that love surrounding me. It was all there, but I was no longer a part of it. I was somewhere else now, somewhere beyond. A soft light began to surround me, its warmth and brilliance unlike anything I had ever experienced. It wasn't harsh as though it were burning me, but gentle, enveloping me in a way that made every fiber of my being feel safe, cared for, and at ease. The light didn't blind me. Instead, it seemed to pull me in, drawing me closer, as though it had always been there, waiting for me. There was no fear of it, no hesitation. I wasn't afraid of what was coming, of what this light represented. It felt like home, like a place where I could finally rest, finally be at peace. I continued to float, gently, moving toward the light with an ease that I could not explain. It was as if gravity had no hold on me, as if the very essence of my being was being lifted into something far grander than I had ever imagined. I felt no need to rush, no urgency, just a peaceful, effortless movement toward something that was calling me, something that felt both familiar and profoundly new. There was no sense of time in this place, no ticking of a clock, no rush to get somewhere. Everything seemed to exist in a state of perfect stillness. There was no before or after. There was only this moment, this place, and the peace that enveloped me. I couldn't see where I was going, but I didn't need to. The warmth of the light was enough. I was being led, guided by something far more powerful than anything I had ever known. It wasn't just a physical sensation, it was a spiritual one, a knowing that I was safe, that I was held in a way I could not begin to understand. In the distance, I saw a figure taking shape. A presence, gentle yet unmistakable, radiated from the figure. It wasn't a shape I could define with any certainty, but there was something about it that made my heart feel full. This presence, though still undefined, was like a magnet, pulling me closer, guiding me, offering a peace so complete that I had no doubt that I was exactly where I needed to be. And with that, the world I knew, the kitchen, my family, my body, faded into the distance. The light enveloped me completely, and I was no longer just an observer. I was being pulled into something far greater than myself, something that held no fear, no pain, no sorrow. I was free, untethered, and in that freedom I encountered a peace unlike anything I had ever known. There was no need for words, no explanation. I simply knew that this was where I was meant to be. The transition from the world I knew to this other realm was gentle, serene, and utterly complete. And in that moment, I understood, deeply, profoundly, that I was no longer bound by the limitations of the body I had once inhabited. I had let go, and there was nothing but peace. The light enveloped me completely, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was no longer drifting aimlessly, no longer a fragment floating in the void. I was being drawn towards something. The warmth I had felt earlier, so gentle and serene, was now deepening into something far more profound. It wasn't a blinding, harsh light like the ones we often imagine, something that would overwhelm the senses. No, this light was soft, inviting, like the glow of the sun just before it sets, the kind of light that makes you feel as though the entire world is wrapped in love. I felt pulled toward it, a magnetic force drawing me in, filling my being with an unexplainable sense of peace. There was no fear, no hesitation, only an overwhelming desire to move toward it, to get closer to this light that seemed to promise everything my soul had longed for. As I drew closer, the light began to take form. It was no longer just a warm, comforting glow. It was now something, or rather, someone. I could feel it, see it, though not with physical eyes, but with every fiber of my being. And then, in the midst of that glowing radiance, I saw him. It was Jesus. At first, I couldn't fully comprehend the sight before me. He was standing there, his figure radiating warmth and light, but not in the way I had ever imagined. His presence was not overwhelming or intimidating. Instead, it was inviting, soft, kind, and absolutely full of love. He didn't appear distant, as I had always envisioned a divine being would. No, he was real. His presence was immediate and so utterly familiar, as if I had always known him. His eyes, deep and infinite, looked at me, and I felt as though he could see into the very core of who I was. There was no judgment in those eyes, no reprimand for mistakes I had made or regrets I carried. No, there was only love. Unconditional, pure, unwavering love. It was the kind of love that spoke without needing to say a word. In his gaze, I felt known. Every joy, every sorrow, every fear, and every hope that I had ever experienced, it was as though he could see all of it, not with a critical eye, but with a deep understanding, a compassion that went far beyond what I could have ever fathomed. He didn't need to speak, and yet I heard him. Not with my ears, but deep inside my soul. I felt his voice, not as words in the way we understand them, but as a direct communion with my heart, a whisper so profound that it transcended anything I had ever known. "You are loved," he spoke, his voice like the softest breeze, gentle yet so filled with power. "You have always been loved, and you always will be. You are not alone." I trembled. Not from fear, but from the overwhelming warmth and security his words instilled in me. There was no room for doubt, no space for insecurity. I felt whole in a way I never had before. I didn't need to ask questions, didn't need to explain myself or my life. Everything I had been, everything I had done, everything I had struggled with, he knew it all. But it didn't matter. There was no shame, no guilt, no sense of inadequacy. In his presence, none of those things could survive. They dissolved into the pure, radiant love that surrounded me. The connection I felt with him was so deep that words failed me. It was as if, in that moment, the entire universe, every star, every galaxy, every atom, was bound together by this love. The love I felt from him wasn't just for me, it was for all things. I could sense it, the depth and breadth of it, stretching beyond the boundaries of time and space. It was in that realization that I understood the true nature of love. It wasn't just a feeling, a fleeting emotion that came and went. It was the force that held everything together. The very fabric of existence was woven from this love, this divine essence that transcended every form of life, every moment. Jesus didn't have to explain it. I understood it instinctively. It wasn't something that could be taught. It was something that could only be felt. Something that resonated at the deepest levels of my being. The love he radiated wasn't conditional. It wasn't dependent on anything I had done or failed to do. It was simply there, a presence of unmeasurable grace and acceptance. His eyes never left mine. There were no judgments, no expectations. There was only acceptance, as if he had always known me, not just the person I had been, but the person I was meant to be. Every part of me, every moment of my life, had brought me to this moment, and there was no sense of regret, no sense that anything had gone wrong. I had always been loved, even in my imperfections. I had always been perfect in his eyes, not because I was flawless, but because his love saw beyond my flaws. In his presence, I felt like I was finally home. There were no questions I needed answered, no wounds that needed healing, because in that moment, everything was whole. There was no need for words. There was only the profound knowing of connection, of being held and loved. Jesus spoke again, though his words were not for my mind to grasp. They were meant for my heart. Do not fear. You are safe. You are at peace. And in that peace, I felt the weight of all the struggles and uncertainties I had carried in my life fall away. It was as though I had been given permission to lay them down, to rest, and to be free. There was no more striving, no more trying to prove myself worthy. There was only the freedom of being loved exactly as I was. I could feel my soul, if that was even the right word for it, being replenished. It was as if every corner of my being had been filled with the divine love that he radiated, so much so that there was no longer any space for loneliness or fear. I had never known such peace. There was no more striving, no more ache, no more searching. In that moment, I understood that this was what I had been searching for all along, a complete and total surrender to love, to the understanding that I was enough just as I was. The light surrounding him, and now surrounding me, seemed to pulse with life, its rhythm perfectly in sync with my own. I was no longer separate, no longer alone. I was one with everything. I wanted to say something, to thank him, to express the depth of my gratitude for what I was feeling, but no words seemed right. The love I felt was beyond the capacity for human language. All I could do was simply rest in it, let it wash over me and fill me with its grace. And as I stood there in the presence of Christ, it became clear to me that this was not an isolated experience, not something for me alone. This love, this presence, it was not confined to this moment, to this encounter. It was for everyone. It was the very foundation of all things. And in his gaze, I realized the profound truth that all we needed, all we were ever meant to give and receive, was this love. This love wasn't just a concept. It was the force that moved the universe, that connected everything, that healed and restored and gave meaning to everything. It was the source of all life. There was no fear here, no pain, only love. Only peace. Only the understanding that no matter what, I was part of something infinitely greater than myself, and that all was well. In his presence, I understood that this was the core of life, love, the very essence of all existence. And I knew with a certainty that reached to the depths of my soul that this love, this profound, infinite love, was what held everything together. The universe itself was a reflection of this love. And it was beautiful. It was perfect. It was everything. The light surrounding us, so gentle and all-encompassing, grew warmer as Jesus began to guide me forward. The space around us felt infinite, stretching beyond any point of reference I had ever known, and yet it was not cold or empty. It was alive in a way that felt like pure, unbroken harmony. Every particle of it seemed to hum with the pulse of creation itself. A peace that was deeper than anything I could have imagined, beyond comprehension, flooded every part of me, as if I were both within it and a part of it. It was timeless here, and in that timelessness there was no need for haste, no rush to get anywhere or do anything. All that mattered was the moment, the present, eternal, infinite moment. As we walked together, I felt no separation from him. His presence was a constant, steady, loving force, guiding me not with words, but with a deeper, unspoken understanding. His peace became my peace. His love became my love. There was no loneliness, no emptiness. In this place, there was only unity, an all-encompassing unity that reached beyond anything I had ever experienced on earth. Around us, the realm seemed to pulse with vibrant, radiant light. It wasn't glaring or overwhelming. It was soft, warm, like sunlight streaming through the leaves of a tree, filtering through the branches in gentle rays. Every corner of this place shimmered with that same gentle radiance, filling the space with an overwhelming sense of joy. There was a sense of aliveness here, not in the sense of motion or activity, but in a deeper, more rooted kind of life, one that radiated peace, love, and unity. I could feel the presence of others around us, though I did not see them at first. As we walked, Jesus led me to a quiet, open field of light. The air was filled with the soft scent of something sweet, something familiar. It was like the aroma of cookies, fresh from the oven, filling the space and bringing with it the warmth of home. The scent reminded me of childhood, of the moments spent in Mama's kitchen, of laughter and love, of being wrapped in the simplicity of family. The sweetness in the air seemed to resonate with every memory of home, of love, of being part of something greater than myself. The memories of my family, Mama, Maggie, rushed through me, and for a moment I felt a pang of longing for them. But it wasn't the kind of longing filled with pain or sorrow. It was a longing born of love, of the desire to be reunited with them, to share this peace, this warmth, this profound sense of belonging that I was now experiencing. I turned to Jesus, and he smiled. There were no words spoken between us, but I knew he understood. I knew he felt that same longing for the people I had left behind. He had never asked me to forget them or to leave them behind. In fact, I felt in his presence a deep assurance that they, too, were part of this great eternal unity, that love could not be broken, and that there would be a time when we would all be together again. Jesus spoke without words, but his message was clear. All that you love will never be lost. You are all connected eternally. As we continued, I could now see figures moving in the distance, beings of light glowing with the same warmth that filled the air. There was no specific form to them, no defined shape or appearance, but they were distinct, each unique, yet all part of the same whole. They moved together in perfect harmony, working and playing, living in a unity that felt like a beautiful dance, a movement of souls in perfect alignment with one another, with the divine, with the peace that enveloped this place. There was no sense of competition, no division, no isolation, only togetherness, only love. I began to recognize some of these beings of light. Though their forms were not familiar in the way I had known them in the physical world, there was a knowing within me, an instant recognition. One figure moved closer to me, its glow brighter than the others. And in that moment, I recognized them. It was my grandmother, the one who had passed when I was young. I had not thought of her in years, but there she was, radiant and full of life, her presence bringing me an immense sense of comfort. Her eyes, full of warmth, met mine, and she nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the love that still connected us. There were others too, faces I could not place, but somehow I knew them. Some were relatives I had never met, some were strangers whose names I had never learned, but we all shared the same essence, the same love. There was no distinction here, no boundaries of race or time, of past or future. We were all the same, bound together by the same force, by the same eternal truth. As I looked around, I realized that I was not alone in my experience. Everyone here, every being of light, was united in this peace. There was no jealousy, no comparison, no sense of separation. It was as though all of existence, every soul, every being, was part of a greater, beautiful tapestry, woven together with threads of light, love, and truth. The beauty of heaven was not just in its peaceful radiance, but in the profound connection between all things. There was no division. There was no fear, no loss. All was unified, whole, complete. Heaven was not just a place. It was a state of being, a state of pure, unbroken love. It was where the good and pure could exist without interruption, where every moment was filled with peace and joy, where every soul knew its worth and its connection to the divine. The longer I stood there, surrounded by these beings of light, the deeper my understanding grew. Heaven wasn't just beautiful in the way the world might describe beauty. It wasn't just a place of visual splendor or tranquil landscapes. It was beautiful in its essence. It was a place of perfect harmony, where the love of God flowed freely and unimpeded. It was a place where all hearts beat in unison with that divine rhythm, where there was no need for words, for explanations, for even time itself. Everything just was in perfect harmony. But as I reveled in this beauty, this peace, there was still something stirring within me, a sense of yearning. As much as I was filled with a sense of belonging here, there was a part of me that felt a deep, gentle ache. I thought of Mama. I thought of Maggie. I thought of the people I had loved and left behind on Earth. There was a love I could not bring myself to let go of. Though the love that surrounded me was immense, it could not fill the void left by their absence. I felt that familiar pull in my heart, the longing to hold them once more, to share with them what I had discovered here, to bring them into this peace, into this unity. I turned to Jesus again, and he looked at me, his eyes full of understanding. He spoke again, not with words, but with a knowing that reached deep into my heart. Your love for them is not lost. It is a bond that cannot be broken, and though you are here, they are with you always. The message was clear. The longing I felt, though real, was not one of separation. Love could not be separated by time, by space, or by death. It was eternal. It was here, just as it had always been. And even though I could not physically be with them, we were still connected, still part of the same eternal unity. This thought filled me with comfort. The ache in my heart softened, and I realized that no matter where I was, whether in heaven or on earth, the love I had for those I had left behind would never fade. It was as much a part of me as the very light that surrounded us, and they, in turn, were not far. They were always with me, always a part of this grand, eternal connection. And in that moment, I felt at peace, a peace that transcended time, that transcended everything. I was home, not just in heaven's day, but in the eternal truth of love. I was a part of something infinitely greater than myself, and I knew that everything, every moment, every soul was connected in the vast and beautiful web of existence. The peace of heaven began to fade slowly, like a beautiful dream slipping through my fingers. The warmth and light that surrounded me seemed to retract, pulling away like the retreating tide, and the vibrant colors of the radiant realm were replaced by a sharp, unsettling coldness. As the scene shifted, I felt myself drawn, almost against my will, into a new vision. The transition was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but then the world around me began to twist and contort, the very air thickening with a heaviness I could not escape. The serene, timeless beauty of heaven was replaced with something much darker, much more real, earth in all its brokenness. I saw the world as it was, not as it could be. I saw the faces of the suffering, the tears, the pain, the endless struggle. The very fabric of humanity seemed to be fraying at the edges, torn by division, by hatred, by fear. The bright, eternal love that pulsed through heaven was nowhere to be seen here. It was as if that force had been muted, drowned by the chaos that had consumed the earth. The first scene I was shown was of a family, like my own, but so very different. They sat around a dinner table, not sharing stories or laughter, but weighed down by silence and bitterness. The father, tired and worn, stared at his plate, avoiding eye contact with his wife. The mother looked down at the table, her face a mask of frustration and sorrow. And the children, they were silent too, retreating into themselves, into their own pain. There was no joy here, no warmth, only the heavy presence of distance, the deep, unspoken rift between them. I could feel the tension between them, as palpable as the air itself. It was clear that these were people who loved each other, but the love had been buried under years of neglect, misunderstanding, and resentment. I could see in the father's eyes the regret, the longing to fix things but feeling powerless to do so. And in the mother's eyes there was a weariness, an exhaustion that came from years of trying to hold the family together, only to see it slowly falling apart. The children seemed lost, trapped in their own worlds, unable to bridge the gap between the adults around them. The scene shifted, and I found myself looking at a crowded street in a city. People rushed by, heads down, eyes fixed on their phones or the ground. No one spoke. No one looked up. There was no connection, no recognition of each other as fellow human beings. It was as though everyone was caught in their own private struggle, lost in their own inner worlds, unable or unwilling to reach out to anyone else. The streets were filled with people, yet there was a sense of profound loneliness. The sharp edge of isolation cut through the crowd, and the weight of it hung heavy in the air. I could feel the despair here, the disconnection. Each person seemed to carry the weight of their own burdens, and yet there was no solidarity, no sense of shared struggle. It was as if everyone was fighting their battles alone, separated from the love that could heal them, from the understanding that could unite them. From this bustling city, the vision shifted again, this time to a war-torn country. I saw men and women, young and old, with hollow eyes and faces etched with fear and suffering. The sounds of explosions and gunfire rang in my ears, and I felt the terror that gripped the hearts of those caught in the conflict. The smoke of burning buildings filled the air, and the ground was littered with the remnants of destroyed homes, of lives torn apart. There was no peace here, only a brutal, unrelenting cycle of violence. The suffering was not just physical, it was spiritual, emotional. It was as if the very soul of humanity had been fractured, torn apart by hatred, greed, and fear. The faces of the people were gaunt, their eyes empty, as if the light within them had been extinguished. Children huddled in makeshift shelters, their faces painted with the kind of fear no child should know. Families were torn apart with no hope of ever being whole again. I could feel the weight of it all, the brokenness, the pain, the endless struggle. It was like a heavy fog that surrounded me, suffocating me, drowning me in sorrow. I had been shown heaven, a place of light, of peace, of love. And now I was confronted with this stark contrast, the cruelty of human suffering, the darkness that seemed to have consumed so much of the earth. But then, just as the weight of it all threatened to pull me under, I saw something, a flicker of light in the darkness, a moment of kindness. A woman with a child in her arms stopped in the street and helped an elderly man who had fallen. There were no words exchanged, just a quiet, unspoken act of compassion. The light in the woman's eyes, the way she gently helped the old man to his feet, reminded me that even in the darkest moments, there was still a flicker of humanity, a thread of love that could never be fully extinguished. I saw a man give his last piece of bread to a stranger, his face weary but filled with a quiet dignity. I saw people comforting one another in the midst of their pain, reaching out to hold hands, to share their burdens, even in the face of everything that seemed so hopeless. These moments were rare, fleeting, but they were there. And in those brief glimpses of love, I felt a deep stirring in my soul, an understanding that despite the overwhelming brokenness of the world, there was still hope. There was still a chance for healing. The love that connected all of us in heaven was not lost on earth. It was buried, sometimes deeply, under the weight of suffering and division, but it was still there, waiting to be uncovered. The contrast between the purity of heaven and the suffering on earth was sharp, undeniable. But I also saw that the love I had felt in heaven could be found here too. If only people remembered it. If only they could break through the walls of misunderstanding and hate that divided them. If only they could remember the power of forgiveness, of kindness, of unity. I wanted to shout, to scream for the earth to hear me. I wanted to tell every soul I saw, every broken person, that they were not alone, that they did not have to carry their burdens by themselves. I wanted to remind them of the love that could heal all wounds, that could mend the brokenness and restore the world to its true, peaceful nature. But there was a silence around me. The world was caught in its own cycle of pain, too consumed by its struggles to hear the call to love. And as the vision unfolded before me, I felt a deep sorrow, a deep yearning for the earth to wake up, to remember the truth of who we were and who we could be. I felt an overwhelming sadness for the families torn apart by misunderstandings, for the people suffering from hunger and war, for the divisions that kept us from seeing each other as brothers and sisters. I saw how easy it was for love to be forgotten, how quickly humanity had lost its way, caught in the cycles of pain and division that had come to define their existence. But amid all the sorrow, there was also hope, a flicker of light in the darkness. A reminder that even in the worst of times, even in the deepest suffering, love still had the power to change things. There was still time to heal, to find peace, to remember who we truly were. I longed for that healing. I longed for the earth to see the truth, that love was not just an ideal, but the very force that could bring about change, that could mend the brokenness and bring about a new world. The ethereal light around me began to shimmer, vibrating softly as if it were alive, full of energy and warmth. I could still feel the peace of heaven, the unbroken, infinite peace, but now there was something else, something heavy that hung in the air, something that demanded my attention. Jesus stood before me as radiant as he had been from the beginning, his eyes filled with a deep, profound sorrow. But there was something else there too, something even deeper, a spark of hope, a knowing that despite the suffering, despite everything that was wrong, there was still a path forward. There was still a way to bring healing, to bring love back to the world. His gaze locked with mine, and without a single word spoken aloud, I understood. His eyes pierced into my soul, and I could feel his message as though it had been written on my heart long before this moment. The time on earth was running out, a truth I hadn't fully grasped until now. The suffering, the division, The hatred, it was all part of a cycle that was about to reach a point of no return. The very fabric of humanity was at risk of unraveling entirely. The world I had just witnessed was a shadow of what it could be, and it was deteriorating by the second. Earth was in desperate need of healing, in desperate need of love, a love that transcends everything, a love that could mend even the deepest wounds, a love that could unite broken hearts, heal long-standing wounds, and bind together all the fractured pieces of existence. There were no words exchanged, yet I felt Jesus' voice vibrate within me, and it was as though the truth he was imparting had always been within me, just waiting for the moment of revelation. The world is dying, he seemed to say, and it is love that can save it. But love must be remembered, brought back into the hearts of the people. Love has been forgotten. People are trapped in their anger, in their fear, in their pride. They need to remember the truth, that love heals all things. It is only through love that they can find their way back. His words were not spoken out loud, but they reverberated in my soul as if they had been there all along. It was not a question of if this could be done, but a matter of whether those on earth were willing to listen, to open their hearts to the truth. In the silence that followed, I looked around, seeing the magnificent beauty of heaven in all its peace and serenity. And then, my gaze returned to Jesus. His eyes were full of a tender sadness, but there was also something else, something urgent, something that made me realize the enormity of the task ahead. "You must return," he told me, his voice filled with an emotion I couldn't fully comprehend. "Your mission is not yet finished. The love that you have seen, that you have felt, must be brought back to the world. It is the only way. The time is now, and you have been chosen to carry this message." I felt an overwhelming mixture of emotions. How could I possibly leave this place of infinite peace, this place where all my burdens had been lifted, where my heart had been restored, where I had finally felt whole? The idea of returning to a world so full of pain, so full of division, seemed like an impossible task. I had witnessed the deep suffering, the seemingly unresolvable conflict, the desperation. How could I return to that? How could I leave this place of perfect love and go back to a world that felt so broken? But then I saw something deep in Jesus' gaze. It was a spark of hope. He wasn't asking me to return alone. He was asking me to bring that love, to bring the message of peace, healing, and forgiveness with me. The healing power of love was not something meant to be kept hidden away. It was a force meant to be shared, spread, and used to change the world. I realized that the only way for me to truly honor this experience, this profound truth I had been gifted, was to take it back to the people who needed it the most. "Go back," Jesus seemed to say again, "not for your own sake, but for the sake of all those who are lost, all those who are hurting, all those who are caught in the web of fear and division. You are their reminder. You are their beacon of love. You are the one who will help them remember who they truly are." In that moment, I knew I had to return, not because I wanted to, but because the message of unconditional love was too important to ignore. The truth of what I had witnessed, the peace I had felt, the unity, the joy, it was not just for me. It was for everyone. It was for all of humanity. There was no other choice. I looked at Jesus once more, the weight of his gaze, of his love, of his trust, pressing against my heart. I saw his infinite compassion, his deep understanding of everything that I had seen, everything that was broken, everything that needed to be healed. There was no judgment in his eyes, only a deep longing for humanity to return to the truth of who we were, children of love, made to love and be loved. And so, in that moment, as much as I longed to stay in this perfect place of peace, I understood what needed to be done. I had a mission. We had a mission. Heaven's peace, heaven's love couldn't just stay here. It had to be shared. It had to be brought back to earth. And I was the one who had been chosen to carry it. "Go in peace," Jesus whispered, though the words felt like a deep, resonating truth. "Go with my love. It will guide you. It will sustain you. You are never alone." The moment his words reached my heart, I knew that I was not returning empty-handed. The love, the peace, the understanding I had felt in heaven would stay with me. It would fill me, and it would overflow, flowing out to those around me. The healing power of love was something that no one could take away from me. Not suffering, not pain, not even death. And yet, even as I began to feel myself drawn back, I knew there would be challenges ahead. The world I was returning to was still very broken. People would be skeptical, afraid, lost in their own fears and doubts. But the message would be clear. Love is the answer. Love heals all things. And as long as I carried that truth in my heart, I would have the strength to face whatever lay ahead. I looked at Jesus one last time before everything around me began to dissolve. His presence remained with me. His love remained in my soul, and I knew that it would never leave me, no matter how far I went or how long I lived. With that final gaze filled with both love and sorrow, Jesus allowed me to begin my return. My journey back had begun, not just as an individual, but as a messenger. I was returning to a world in desperate need of healing, but I was not going alone. I carried with me the greatest gift of all, the gift of love, and with it I would do my best to fulfill the mission he had entrusted to me. As the light around me faded, I could already hear the faint echo of the words Jesus had spoken to me, deep within my heart, "Go with my love." And with those words, I felt my body stir. The mission ahead was clear. The love of heaven would reach earth once again. I woke to the blinding lights above me, and the sterile smell of antiseptic filled the air. The first sensation that hit me was confusion. My body felt strange, unfamiliar. It was weak, and the sense of disorientation was overwhelming. I could feel the beep of a heart monitor next to me, a steady rhythm that sounded so alien, yet somehow reassuring. I blinked, trying to adjust to the reality around me. The beeping was loud in my ears, and I could feel the soft pressure of something in my chest, a constant reminder of the fragility of life. The soft, melodic hum of voices reached me next. "Mama?" I whispered hoarsely, though I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or truly awake. A soft gasp came from the side of the bed. A hand, warm, tender, soft, touched mine, and I could already feel the unmistakable love radiating from it. I opened my eyes more fully, and there she was, Mama. Tears in her eyes, a smile on her face, but a mix of concern and relief that crept into every line of her face. "Shh, baby, you're awake," she whispered, her voice trembling. I turned my head slowly, and there were others around me. Maggie, my younger sister, was standing near the foot of my bed, her face pale but hopeful. The medical staff hovered nearby, checking machines, taking notes, but it was the love and concern in the room that overwhelmed me more than anything. I had returned. But it wasn't just my body that had come back, it was something deeper. My heart was full, overflowing, and I could feel the light from heaven still within me. It filled me, and I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I had been given something precious, something life-changing. I had a mission. I was alive again. But I wasn't the same. As the days passed and I grew stronger, I realized that what I had experienced was not just for me. I had seen the profound truth of what it means to live with love and peace. I had been given the chance to witness the harmony of heaven, to feel the overwhelming acceptance of Jesus, and to see the world as it truly was. Broken, but redeemable through the power of love. I knew I had to share what I had learned. At first, it felt strange, as though I was stepping into a world that no longer quite fit me. The walls of the hospital, the sterile smell, the ordinary sounds of life. They all felt distant now, as though I was living in a dream. But the more I spoke, the more the fog of confusion lifted. When I could finally sit up without feeling dizzy, I began to tell them, Mama, Maggie, and anyone who would listen. I spoke about the light, about the warmth, about the peace that I had felt in heaven. I shared the profound love I had felt when I encountered Jesus. I spoke of the message that had been given to me, that love is the answer to all of humanity's suffering, that love is what holds everything together, that love has the power to heal every wound, no matter how deep. Some of them listened, their eyes wide with wonder and curiosity. They could feel the sincerity in my voice. But others, especially the doctors, were more skeptical. They had seen many things, heard many stories, but this was something entirely different. They didn't know what to make of it. I could see the doubt in their eyes, the careful words they spoke, trying to be polite, trying to be professional. But it didn't matter. I wasn't speaking to the doctors or to those who doubted. I was speaking to the hearts of those who were open, those who felt something stir deep within them. And even if only a few listened, I knew I was doing what I was meant to do. I began to teach, slowly at first, then more confidently. I spoke to my family about forgiveness, about embracing one another even in the darkest of times. I told them about the importance of unity, how division is the root of all suffering. I reminded them that no matter how much we disagree or how much we hurt each other, love, pure, unconditional love, was the way to heal all things. Each day, as I grew stronger, I shared more. And the more I shared, the more I realized that my mission was not just to tell my family, but to spread this message as far as I could. The world was at a crossroads. I knew that now. Humanity was teetering on the edge, but love could pull us back. Love could unite us. If we remembered it, if we chose it. There was one night, not long after I'd started speaking more openly about my experience, when Mama pulled me aside. Her face was soft, yet there was a trace of worry in her eyes. "Baby," she said, her voice gentle, "I know what you're saying. I can see the change in you. But I don't want you to feel like you have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. There's so much pain, so much suffering, and I don't want you to get hurt trying to fix it all." I looked at her, a soft smile touching my lips. She didn't understand the depth of what I had seen, the enormity of the task. But I understood why she was concerned. She was my mother. She had seen the pain I'd endured, the heartache and the healing that had come with it, but she didn't see what I had seen. "Mama," I said softly, my voice filled with conviction, "I'm not trying to fix it all. I'm just trying to remind people of the one thing that can heal it all. Love. It's not about doing everything. It's about planting a seed, showing people that kindness, forgiveness, and love have the power to change everything. I can't fix the world, but I can help the people around me remember what's important." Her eyes softened as she nodded, understanding in her gaze. She wasn't sure how the world would react, but she knew this message was coming from a place deeper than anything she had ever seen before. She could see the light in my eyes, the same light that I had felt in heaven, and it filled her heart with both peace and awe. I wasn't alone in this. I had my family, and through them I knew I could reach out to others. Soon, I began to share my story outside the confines of our home. I told people in my church, people in my community. I told them about the peace I had felt, about the love I had seen, and how this love could change everything. Some were hesitant, some curious, and some outright skeptical, but others felt it. They saw the sincerity in my eyes, the depth of conviction in my words. And slowly the seed began to grow. Every time I shared, every time someone else felt the warmth of that love, I was reminded of why I had returned. I had been given a second chance to be part of something greater than myself. I had been given the opportunity to spread a message of healing, of unconditional love. It wasn't easy. There were still days when the weight of the world seemed too heavy, when the darkness of humanity's suffering seemed unbearable. But every time I felt the doubt creeping in, I remembered the love I had witnessed in heaven. I remembered the message Jesus had given me. And I knew that as long as I carried that love with me, I could make a difference. The world was broken, yes, but it was also beautiful. And with every act of kindness, with every act of forgiveness, with every embrace of love, I knew we could heal the world, one heart at a time. I had returned to earth with a mission to love, to heal, and to remind others that love is the answer to all the suffering in the world. I knew now that time was precious, and the world needed this message more than ever. The choice was ours. Love was always the answer, and I was going to spend the rest of my life sharing that truth.